Good evening, barflies and lounge lizards, and welcome to the Wacky World Lounge. And tonight we'll be discussing my favorite sword and sorcery films. I initially wanted to call this top B movie, sword and sorcery films, but then number 5 came along, like the pesky little number 5 it is, and messed that up because it is not a B movie. And that's Beastmaster from 1982, directed by Don Coscarelli. Now, The Beastmaster stars Mark Singer and Tanya Roberts, and it tells the story of a young guy named Dar, who's a hero prophesied to come along and kill Rip Torn. And Dar just happens to be able to talk to animals. Now, this is a well-acted, very cool-looking, fun film, but it definitely has a dark edge, and that comes, I'd say, directly from Don Coscarelli. Because as I mentioned a long time ago, 10 seconds ago, that he was the director of Phantasm. And I really think that comes through here. I mean, even though it is sword and sorcery, there are definitely some creepy elements to the movie. For example, Rip Torn's character has these kind of scantily clad but very ooky looking witch women that hang out with him. And then there's these weird bat flying leech guys that can turn you to bones with their wings, like some very kind of spooky, weird Don Coscarelli kind of phantasm-y elements to it. Now, this one wasn't a hit in theaters, but when it hit cable, it kind of really became a cult film and developed a big following. And said following led to sequels and even a TV series. Now, this was an absolute favorite of mine as a kid. Saw it at the theater, and as soon as it hit cable, and I would watch it all the time. And I really loved the berserkery guys that were locked in that cell. I mean, just something about masked dudes and metal Speedos and thigh-high boots, that appealed to little me, something fierce. I wanted me a skull mask and a metal Speedo and some little boots to run around in. Now, this one is loosely based on a book. And by say loosely, I mean loosely. Because in the novel, Dar was, I don't even know if his name was Dar, but the main character was a Navajo fighter in the future with a big sci-fi setting. So, I mean, talk about complete left field there. Seems like, I mean, it took very little, I mean, I guess dude could talk to animals. That's probably about as far as it went. A little piece of trivia in this one that I found very amazing was Dar runs around with a panther in this movie. Well, I guess they couldn't afford a panther, or there was no panthers hanging around the set, because they just took a normal tiger and painted him black. They say they dyed him black, but there's scenes whenever he eats and stuff, you can kind of see the black coming off of his mouth. I don't think dye would come off that easy. I think they just painted that poor tiger black. And number 4 on the list is Ator, the Fighting Eagle from 1982, directed by Joe D'Amato, which is an all-time favorite director of mine, specifically for the Emmanuel series. I think he did some of the best Emmanuel with one M films that even came out, but that would be a very different list that maybe I'll do someday. I've always wanted to dig into those, but that's not this. But Ator tells the story of Ator, played by Miles O'Keefe, who is born with a birthmark that predicts that he will someday grow up and destroy the Spider Cult and their leader, Dakar. Ator doesn't know this, though. He's just a simple dude who wants to marry his sister, as Ators do, but then the Spider Cult comes into town and kidnaps said sister, completely unaware that Ator is there and is going to destroy them one day, and that kind of sets Ator on his path. Now, this is just a fun, light, Italian-made fantasy film. He fights a giant spider, and I've always just really liked Miles O'Keefe. He's actually one of my favorite Draculas. Anyone who's seen Waxworks can remember his very memorable performance as Dracula in that one. Now, this was actually the first in a series, which includes Ator 4, aka Quest for the Mighty Sword, aka Troll Part 3. And it even has the troll costume from Troll 2 in it, even though it has nothing to do with Troll 2, just like Troll 2 had nothing to do with Troll 1, and so on and so on. Number 3 on the list is Deathstalker 2, aka Deathstalker 2 Duel of the Titans from 1987, directed by Jim Wynorski, executive produced by Roger Corman. Jim Wynorski is an absolute other favorite of mine. As I've said many times before, because I'm exceptionally redundant, the holy trio, the holy trinity of the 80s, Jim Wynorski, Dave Dakota, and Fred Olen Ray. Now, Deathstalker 2, which is a very, very loose sequel to the first film, stars John Terlesky. Even my notes here, I had to write that name out, broken up just so I could pronounce it here. Pretty proud that I did. And Monique Gabriel, who is one of my all-time favorite Scream queens as well. But it tells the story of Deathstalker as he attempts to help a princess win back her kingdom from an evil sorcerer. Now, as I said, being such a loose sequel, you definitely don't have to have seen the first one to enjoy this one. It's got a completely different tone, a completely different vibe. This one's pretty much a comedy, whereas the first Deathstalker was much more serious, more sleazy affair. This one's just lighthearted and fun, with Deathstalker himself being kind of a lovable cut-up. It's definitely two very different films. Now, I actually go back and forth as to which one is my favorite, because the first one, as I said, it's much sleazier, much darker, and I really dig that. But I like the light-hearted tone and feel to this one. And I like the Deathstalker himself in 2, and of course I like Monique Gabriel, which I've often said, next to Linnea Quigley, Monique Gabriel is probably my favorite Scream queen. It's just I know a lot of folks maybe don't necessarily think of her as a Scream queen per se, because she did so many other kind of roles, like the Emmanuel film, Bachelor Party, Amazon Women on the Moon, etc., etc. I'm getting off topic. Back to Deathstalker 2. Now, this one was actually shot in Argentina, and all the extras in the barroom brawl scene were actually professional wrestlers from the World Federation of Argentinian Wrestling. So there you go. Yeah, this is a fun film. Well, I mean, it's on my list. Of course, I highly recommend it, but highly recommended. And on that, we should take some kind of break.
The Freak Phone! And now you can call the phone freaks on the Freak Phone for freaky, frightening fun. Call us now at 1-900-490-FREAK, and you'll get full tilt, madcap, wacky, warp madness. Give us a call, 1-900-490-FREAK, a dazzling, diabolical, hideous dimension of torrid, twisted terror. Join the party. Selected callers get to talk to one of the phone freaks live. Call us now, 1-900-490-FREAK. Just $2 a call.
And we're back with number 2 on the list, and that's Sorceress from 1982, directed by Jack Hill, who's probably, in my book, most famous for Switchblade Sisters and Big Dollhouse, which are both phenomenal films as well. And it was co-produced by Roger Corman and written by Jack Hill and Jim Wynorski. Even though doing research on this episode, there's a little debate as to if Jim Wynorski actually did work on the screenplay or not. I like to think that he did, because I like me some Jim Wynorski. Remember when I mentioned that before, back then? I like Jim Wynorski. Sorceress tells the story of 2 scantily clad twin sisters as they go on a quest to defeat their father, who just happens to be an evil sorcerer who wants to sacrifice them to a giant floating head in the sky. And along the way, the twins team up with a satyr, or satyr, whatever you want to say that, a barbarian, and a Viking. This one is tons of fun, like most of the ones on this list. Really, so far, I think Beastmaster's been the only thing that's been kind of dark. Everything else has been kind of fun, but it's fun, it's kind of sleazy. It's low budget, but it has some amazing practical effects. Like at the end, there is this lion creature-y thing up in the sky, and it looks phenomenal. It still impresses me to this day how cool that lion-y guy looks. I actually saw this one at the theater, and it's just really charming, just has a nice feel to it. It's just fun. Like I said, just fun film. Fun. And it was filmed in Mexico, and the shoot was apparently plagued by, and I read this, by rain and fire. That's some tough shooting right there. And a little piece of trivia, the role of Pando, the satyr, was actually written for Sid Haig to play. But Roger Corman did not want to pay Sid Haig's fee, and so Sid wouldn't do it. And that's a shame, because wow, would I have loved to have seen Sid Haig in this role. And jumping back, because I'd moved on, but then I forgot to mention this was actually Jack Hill's final film as well. And number 1 on the list, and that is The Barbarians from 1987, directed by, bear with me, Ruggero Deodato, who, I'm sure that was very wrong, but he's actually most famous for Cannibal Holocaust, which I actually think this is what he should be most famous for, The Barbarians, not Cannibal Holocaust. cost. But the Barbarians tells the story of twin barbarians. That's weird. I did not plan this with Sorceress and then this. I guess I just like twins. But of twin barbarians, this time male, Kuchek and Gore, played by the Barbarian brothers, Peter and David Paul. I'm sure many of you remember them from the 80s and early 90s, but they were basically just two hugely buff, awesome, long-haired, I guess, actors who went by the team name The Barbarians. And they were in a bunch of stuff and just really cool guys. And this was kind of their film. They finally got their own film, and that was this. Did I mention they got their own film and it was this? It was this. Oh, I forgot to finish telling the plot. But the twins are separated as children, but then they meet again as adults and they go out and get a little revenge. And that's The Barbarians. It's another fun, another light movie with great effects. Again, one of these lower budget movies with just these great practical effects. Like there's just this gory dragon scene where they just mess a dragon up. Very, very cool. And it's got a really great cast too, It's got a really great cast too, including, that's the word, Richard Lynch, Michael Berryman, and George Eastman. And of course the Barbarians themselves. But I mean, I will pretty much watch anything with George Eastman in it. So that right there, did you hear what I said? Let me jump back. Richard Lynch, Michael Berryman, and George Eastman. I mean, come on. Now this was actually a co-production between Cannon Films and Cannon Films Italy. And to me, again, it's on this list, this is my favorite Cannon film. But I never hear people talk about it when they discuss Cannon films. Yeah, hands down, my favorite Cannon film. I actually initially first discovered this one, I remember it well, because when I was growing up, and I've told this story a zillion times, our initially places we rented movies at were not video stores. The first one was an appliance store, and then we started renting from a gas station. But I can remember the very first actual video store we went into was just a small, tiny little place, and in a mini mall. Don't even remember the name of it. It was like a mom and pop place, and they had this catalog on the counter, well, I guess with things to come. But there was this offer selling Barbarians t-shirts. And I remember seeing it, and I didn't know who the Barbarians were at that point, but I love sword and sorcery type stuff. And I saw it, and it immediately just caught my fancy, caught my attention. And then years later, maybe not too many years later, but later, I saw it on cable, taped it, and absolutely loved it. I would watch this one over and over again. Highly recommended. And this one is out on a 2-movie set with this one and one called The Norseman, I believe. And that is my list. And that's all the time we have for tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, and keep it wacky.